Shalom, everyone. This week, Torah's portion is called Pikudei, and it is in Exodus 38, verse 21 through 38. That's the end of Exodus. So let's get started, and we're going to start out with prayer. If everybody would join me, please. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Lord our God, everlasting King, who sets us apart by his establishments on words of Torah. So, Pikudei. Pikudei literally can be translated as accounts, like an accountant taking care of the books and knowing what all the numbers are for and how everything balances out, which I found to be very interesting in light of what's going on right now with our government and all the accounting basically that is being done. So I just thought, wow, that is really cool. Pikudei, accounts. Well, this is about Moses giving an account of how everything that the people had donated for the Mishkan, how it had been used, okay? Everything that was gathered for the tabernacle, all the vessels and everything, how they were actually used, because we know from the scriptures that they gave over and above. They had so much stuff that he had to literally tell them, stop. That's enough, stop. Because they kept giving and giving, which was just beautiful. But he's giving an account. And it's important because here is this man. Moses was known as the most humble of men. And he was a man of integrity. And basically, he should be an inspiration for our lives as how, he took care of everything, and
recording in
had an accounting for, the people so that they could know exactly where everything was used. So, like I said, he was a man of integrity. And the dictionary defines integrity as the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, moral uprightness. It is the firm adherence to a code of especially moral and artistic values and incorruptibility. We're going to get a little bit more into that, but that was how Moses was known, as a man of integrity. Yet, we started seeing that people were chattering. Back in Exodus 33:8, whenever Moses went out of the tent, all the people would rise and stand, okay, at the entrance of each tent, and they would gaze after Moses. How did Moses move? Where did he go? What did he do? And they would just kind of like follow, with their eyes, with their heads. They would just turn and watch where he went until he had entered the tent. So in Jerusalem Talmud, Bikurim, under the section Bikurim 339, it was when Moses went to the tent, the entire people rose. Two Amorim, one as praise and one as shame. The one who says as praise, to see the just person and acquire merit. The one who says as shame, the comments that the people were making and whispering to each other. Look at his thighs. Look at his feet. He eats from the Jews. He drinks from the Jews. All that he has is from us Jews. So in other words, they were already complaining. And you stop and think that a lesson had not been learned when they had been back in the wilderness, and the Lord was giving the Torah to Moshe, and they were building this golden calf. And the people down there, were being so awful and basically returning to idolatry. And the whole thing with the ground opening up, and all the children of Korah, get swallowed up. And that was a result of gossip and mistrust. And you would think that now that they're actually going to build the Mishkan, that all that would have gone away. But according to the Jerusalem Talmud, they were complaining. Look at his thighs. Look at his feet. The way he eats. Oh, he just drinks. Everything he eats, everything he drinks, it comes from us. We're so important. And look at him. So they were complaining. They were complaining. Oops. Sorry. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So there was a lack of trust. Okay. And what they were saying, according to Rabbi Isaac, the way he explained it, when one person would praise him, his companion would retort, "Fool, do you imagine that a man in charge of the work of building a sanctuary with weights of silver and gold that are not examined nor weighted or accounted for will not become wealthy?" When he heard that, he said, "Be assured." Now, this is Moses speaking. "Be assured, when the work of the tabernacle is completed, I will give them an accounting." When it was completed, he said to them, "These are the accounts of the tabernacle." And that's according to Midrash Tanchuma, Pikudei 7:4. So we know that this Torah portion is called accounting. And so we're kind of getting an understanding of why this accounting was taking place. It's because people had been complaining, basically, and saying, "Hey, we gave over and above. Look at all the stuff we gave. Where's all our stuff? What was it used for?" So they're complaining, and they're basically bad mouthing the most humble of men and a man of integrity, and they're complaining. So I put here my favor, because in Exodus 33:1, and like, granted, this is not this, some of these verses that I'm showing you are not in this week's Torah portion, but they go along with the teaching. 33:1 says, "And Adonai said to Moshe, I will also do this thing that you have asked, for you have truly gained my favor, and I have singled you out by name." So it didn't matter what the people were saying and how they were complaining. God singled out Moshe. Moshe knew what he was supposed to do, and he was walking according to what God had told him he needed to do. So he knew he had God's favor. And yet, even though he knew he had God's favor, he's still hearing people bad mouthing him. He's still hearing the gossip about him, but he keeps going. And, nowadays we say, "Oh, just brush it off, just go on, just brush it off, just blow it off. Don't worry about it. Just go on." But for me, I think about Moshe, and I just think, man, he was the most humble of men, and he's going through this. What makes any of us think we're not going to go through the same type of thing? That no matter how much integrity we may have in a situation, there are always going to be mouths moving and complaining and saying something. but you got to know who called you. You got to know how you are supposed to do the thing that God has asked of you. So in Talmud Yoma 38a, it says, and I put above suspicion, and I see this person in my mind. I was seeing this person just walking kind of like on eggshells, walking so carefully so that nobody can criticize him. And that's kind of how Moses, he wasn't doing it because the people, his actions were to do what God wanted him to do. They were not because the people were complaining. His actions were a direct result of honoring God. So in Talmud Yoma 38a, it says, not only must one's behavior be innocent and beyond reproach in the eyes of God, but he must also ensure that he is beyond suspicious in the eyes of man. So our character should be that no matter what, we're doing it to honor God, and we should all be above reproach. So you stop and think about your daily walk with God and your daily encounters with people at work, at the store, wherever you're at. And you stop and think, is my behavior above reproach? Am I behaving in a way that is honoring God? Not so much how everybody else is looking at you. Is my behavior honoring God? Because that's all that matters. What people are seeing is the actions that you're taking in a situation, how you react or act in any situation. And it's so easy when you say something or you do something that, when people's eyes are looking, oh, you know what? This person did this. This person said that. I didn't like the way they said this. I didn't like the way they said that. When you're in that position, you have to make sure that what you are doing is what God wanted you to do, that you are honoring God with your acts. So there's always going to be gossiping and pointing of fingers. But in Leviticus 19:16 says, do not go around gossiping among your people. So that's in your community, in your congregation, in your groups that gather. Too often we see that the very people pointing and accusing are the very ones involved in things that are simply not kosher or according to Torah. I remember they used to say, and they still do, some people, remember, if you're pointing a finger, you've got, fingers pointing back at you. Well, that's true. But more importantly is, how about don't point the finger? Don't point the finger. Don't be criticizing. And I think that comes down to trust. Trusting other people that maybe they're talking to somebody and you don't really understand it, or you're uncomfortable with it. You don't know what the end goal is in the situation, and you really don't know what God has told that person to say or do. So it is a lot of trust in those situations. Just like when we go to work and we have to trust that our boss is having us do the right job for the day to get the mission done by the end of the day. And it'll be the right, you'll be producing the right things that you need to produce at work, right? Well, it's the same thing in congregational life, but it's the same thing in your own families, So Mishnah Torah, under human dispositions 7, it says, Who is a gossiper? One who collects information and then goes from person to person saying, this is what so-and-so said. This is what I heard about so-and-so. Even if the statements are true, they bring about the destruction of the world. Gossip brings around the destruction of the world. Continued. There is a much more serious sin than gossip, which is also included in this prohibition, lashon hara, that is relating, deprecating facts about a colleague, even if they're true. Lashon hara does not refer to the invention of lies. That is referred to as defamation of character. Rather, one who speaks lashon hara is someone who sits and relates, this is what so-and-so has done. His parents were such and such. This is what I have heard about him, telling uncomplimentary things concerning this transgression. And the verse that they get it from is Psalms 12:4, because it states, may God cut off the guileful lips, the tongues which speak proud things. So this is wisdom for the wise. Proverbs 21:23 says, those who guard their mouths and their tongues keep themselves from calamity. Psalm 141:3 says, set a guard over my mouth. Lord, keep watch over the door of my lips. We're going to get a little bit more into that because of the Amidah in a few slides, excuse me. Proverbs 18:21 says, the tongue has the power of life and death. Those who love it will eat its fruit. Proverbs 12:18, the words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise bring healing. Proverbs 26:18-20 says, like a maniac shooting flaming arrows of death is one who deceives their neighbor and says, I was joking. I was only joking. Without wood, a fire goes out. Without a gossip, a quarrel dies down. So I remember years ago that there was I think it's a midrash. And basically it's one person has gossiped about another. And the person ends up feeling really bad about it and goes to his rabbi. And the rabbi, he's like, Rabbi, what do I do? You know, I have talked about this person. I have spoken bad about this person. How can I fix this? And the rabbi says, go buy a feather pillow and then go out into the field and basically just let all the feathers out. Let the feathers just come all out of that pillow. And then go find every feather. Because that's what gossip is like. There's no way you're going to be able to go back and clean up all the mess that gossip can do. Because it'll just go out like crazy. And the wind will take it where it's going to take it. And all of a sudden, something that, could have possibly been dealt with between one person and another, it ends up going out all over. And it destroys people. It destroys communities. It can destroy a family. And there was another midrash also about basically going along with Proverbs 26:18-20, that it's like a fire. It is like a fire, that the tongue can set a fire. With our words, we are setting a fire, and that fire can go out and it can destroy an entire community. It can destroy the world, because you're destroying people when you decide to gossip, or like they say, lashon hara. And it's interesting. The reason I studied this, and I'll go on, but the reason I was studying this was I was looking up a picture of my husband's in online, and I typed his name in. And when I typed his name in, his name came up, but then it said Michael, Messianic artist Michael Washer's wife died. And I'm like, excuse me? I'm here, guys, I'm here. I was reading it and I'm going, what am I reading? And there were like 4 different entries about Michael Washer, Messianic artist, that his wife had passed. And then I even found one that said Michael Washer, Messianic artist, died in Gaza. It was so disturbing and so painful that something like that would come up on the internet. And you just go, is this just malicious? Were people posting something mean? And you just want to move on, but it affects you. And I think that if for any one of us, if we would see something like that, it just kind of shocks you. And it was so disturbing. It's like, you know what? Yeah, I think this is after seeing that, it kind of was like, yeah, this is where I need to go, because it was so disturbing. And I was already looking at how poor Moses was going through what he went through. And yet he kept his mouth shut and said, I'll give you an accounting. You're asking for an accounting, I'll give you an accounting. And you got to stop and think, there had never been an accounting before. Basically, the first accounting that takes place is when the Levites got all that information and Moses, shared it with the people. So in the Amidah, every week we do the standing prayer, we do the Amidah. And one part that I just find to be just so amazing, it says, my God, guard my tongue from evil and my lips from speaking lies or deceit. To those who curse me, let my soul be silent, and may my soul be like dust to all. I'll stop right there. I'll continue reading in a second. But it's like, that's just the perfect picture of Moshe, with the people complaining and talking about the poor man. Open my heart to your Torah, and may my soul pursue your mitzvot, and save me from a bad mishap, from the evil inclination, from a bad woman, and from all evils that suddenly come upon the world. And all who plan evil against me, swiftly thwart their counsel and frustrate their plans. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart find favor before you, Lord, my rock and my redeemer. In the world that we're living in right now, if you even look at the news at any level, you hear some of the stuff going on and you're just like, oh my gosh, how can people be so mean? There are people that are just really mean. I just heard this week about how people, this thing called swatting, and I'm sure some of you are familiar with it, but somebody calls in to the police and says, oh, there's a very dangerous situation at so-and-so's house, and you need to go. And they send a SWAT unit, fully armed, and they break in, they come to the house because supposedly something horrible is going on. So, there could be guns and blah, 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 right? So they send these SWAT units in full gear, guns ready to shoot, and the people inside are innocent. It's just that somebody wanted to hurt them or wanted to scare them. And it's scary because, they're talking more and more about it, that, there needs to be some kind of legislation passed to stop this horrible behavior, because somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's going to get shot, if not the police, the people inside the home, but it's a new evil. It's like the creativity of the evil that goes on nowadays is just, it's frightening. It was evil before, when people would shout fire in a crowded theater or pull a fire alarm. I mean, we saw that, just a couple of years back, that even a congressman pulled a fire alarm. And it was because he didn't want the voting to take place in Congress. And nothing happened to the man. But that's just where our country is at right now. That these things are going on, and it's just malicious and it's mean. So I put detestable to God. Proverbs 6:16-19. There's 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, and a person who stirs up conflict in the community. So it would be like blood on your hands when you have committed any one of those 6 things listed above. Moses had to contend with the gossip, the lies that the people were saying about him. Through it all, he remained humble and just. He did only what God asked him to do. And in the end, he prevailed. And in the end, he ended up giving an accounting to the people to tell them, look, can you turn off your mics, please? I'm sorry. And in the end, he prevailed. He was able to give the accounting to them, to show them, look, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't misuse any of the things you gave me. That's real important. I didn't misuse any of the things you gave me. That was his attitude in giving the account. So back to Mishnah Torah. Our sages said there are 3 sins for which retribution is exacted from a person in this world, and for which he is nonetheless denied a portion in the world to come: idol worship, forbidden sexual relations, and murder. Lashon hara is equivalent to all of them. That's scary. That is so scary, because you think idol worship, oh, that's the worst. Forbidden sexual relations, oh, that's gotta be the worst. Murder, that's horrible. Lashon hara is equal to all of those things. In addition, they said, Lashon Hara kills three people: the one who speaks it, the one who listens to it, and the one about whom it is spoken. The one who listens to it suffers more than the one who speaks it. So about giving the account, Moses gives an account of how everything that was gathered for the tabernacle and all the vessels was actually used. The Levites, like I said, performed the quote audit, and Moses, like God's CEO, gave the people the accounting. So in Exodus 18:21, it says, furthermore, you shall select from all the people able men, wealthy men, who don't need to take a bribe, who fear God, men of truth, hating dishonest gain, that they're covetous. And you shall place these over them as leaders of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. Moses had more fear of God than he had of fear of man. No one is immune to the possibility of temptation, and no one is irreproachable and above suspicion. Yet God said, choose this type of person as a leader, somebody that's above reproach, somebody that is wealthy so that they won't take a bribe, somebody who fears God, somebody who is a man of truth and hates dishonesty. So with everything pertaining to Moses, what Moses went through, we need to put ourselves in that position, okay? Because each of us will have to give an account to God. How did you use the things that God has put into you, that God has given you? You'll have to give an account. And I believe it's not just a monetary thing. It's not just talent. You know, if you sing to God, how will you give an account for your singing or for your artistry or for your writing? It's about our actions also, how we interact with people, how we treat people. All of that, we give an account to God. So Romans 14:12 says, so then each one of us will give an account of himself to God. So we stand before God and we'll give an account of ourselves, of our actions, of our words, of what we did with what God gave us, the tasks that God gives us. Ecclesiastes 12:13-14. The end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, his instructions, for this is the whole duty of man, to fear God and keep his Torah. For God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing, whether good or evil. Jeremiah 17:10. I, the Lord, search the heart and test the mind, to give every man according to his ways, according to the fruit of his deeds. And I felt this was really important, especially because we are coming to Pesach. It's right around the corner. And it says, I, the Lord, search the heart and test the mind. So just like we go through our home and we search for the leaven and we start getting the leaven out. I mean, we start right after Purim. to clean out the leaven and get rid of the flour. And, we start that process, and it's a good timing because you've got that whole month to get rid of the last bit of flour and get rid of the last bit of bread or whatever. So you start getting rid of those things, right? You start using them so that by the time Passover comes, you've searched. But that's just the physical thing of leaven that we're looking for, right? But we look for the leaven within ourselves during this time. And it says the Lord searches the heart and tests the mind. And God starts bringing things up to you so that you can start dealing with them. And hopefully by the time you get to Pesach, you've looked at those things, you've dealt with those things, and you've swept them out of you, swept them out of your home, so that come Passover, you're able to participate in Passover because you've already gotten out of your home, both physical and spiritual, that leaven. And, we don't really talk about it a whole lot, but, there's always the Passover, and then like a month later is the Passover for the unclean. If you were unclean during the Passover, there's still time. You still have time to get rid of the leaven and participate in the next, the next Passover. So Psalm 19:14 says, "Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer." Because the Lord looks and takes account, or rather, we give an account to God when we go before him. I pray that we can say, "Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, Lord," because I've cleaned out the house. I've dealt with these things that were not pleasing to you in my life. So it's not enough to do right. We must be seen to do right, especially when there's room for rumor and scope for suspicion. And that's in covenant and conversation. Also, I found this in Sepharia pertaining to Exodus. So it's not enough to just do right. It needs to be done when you're doing right, especially when there's room for rumor and suspicion of others. So I hope that that spoke to you, and I hope you can see that what Moses went through is very similar to what we can go through. And that's all I have.